Let's take a look at BER 79-2. I think this is a very complicated case, actually. It's seemingly fairly simple. Facts speak for themselves, I guess, although they're kind of convoluted too. Um, why am I interested in this case? Let me just perhaps explain that. Um, this is about public criticism. One of the things we're doing this week is looking at aspects of engineering ethics that don't have anything to do primarily with public safety, although, of course, this case does. Um, but the primary reason we're interested in it is not because of the public safety aspect so much as the engineers criticizing each other in public aspect. Monday's case had to do with basically fraud, if you want to call it that. Pretending to bill one customer for work that's being done for actually being done for another customer or another client. This is obviously a serious concern, but is it an engineering ethics case? Well, it depends upon what you consider engineering to be. I suppose if you consider engineering as a profession, then it is very relevant. It's not relevant to anything specifically having to do with engineering, the practice of engineering, as it is just professional ethics. And so, too, this is an aspect of professional ethics that doesn't really have anything specifically to do with engineering. And it brings up the subject of how engineers are meant to treat each other. If we look at actually the history of engineering ethics in America and engineering codes, maybe one of the first concerns, aside from the concern of how you're supposed to treat your client, is how engineers are supposed to treat each other. Before the central concern of engineering ethics became public safety, those two, how you treat your client, which basically don't cheat your client, and how you treat other engineers, especially in public, basically don't slander other engineers. Those were really the central concerns of the engineering societies when they started to put codes of ethics together. So the question of how you treat other engineers in public and the delicate question of whether you can criticize another engineer in public is it's an important part of the thing. It's an important part of engineering ethics considered as professional ethics. This is a very complicated case. What engineers A and B have done in terms of trying to fulfill the wishes and needs of this community that's got a lot of trash. And, whether or not it is an ethical design, well, that's exactly what Engineer C was getting at. It wasn't an ethical design because it was environmentally unsound, as is in the facts. My real interest here is uh, how Engineer C's criticisms really stand. I mean, if engineers A and B have done, made an ethical design, then I'm not really quite sure that engineer C's criticisms are ethical. That is, at least if they're made in public. And if engineer C, on the other hand, if engineer C's criticisms of the design are sound, then engineer A and B are either incompetent or unethical because that thing should never be built. So it's resolved in an interesting way in the Board of Ethical Review decision. It's basically resting on the idea of professional judgment. That is, that engineering is often a matter of judgment, and what may be true in the judgment of one engineer is not true in the judgment of another. So it could very well be, they say, that all the engineers here, engineers A and B in their design, and engineer C in his criticism of their design, are all, completely ethical because they have differing judgments of the situation. The benefit of the doubt is going to engineers A and B that they're both competent and they are ethical, so that they're designed for this trash mountain that they've created is an ethical design and ethical to implement. But that engineer C's judgment, in engineer C's judgment, is not so that he's not being malicious or somehow reckless in his public criticisms of it, because they have differing judgments. But those judgments are both defensible, and there may not be a clear truth of the matter. I think that's the idea of the decision. I'm not quite sure that I'm satisfied with it. That is, obviously, if engineer C is correct, then there's something fundamentally wrong with what engineers A and B have done. And that doesn't go away because we say judgment. And also, if what engineers A and B have designed is ethical, then engineer C is kind of being reckless in airing this difference in public. It might be that he would be better advised to go to engineers A and B in private and present his difficulties before he goes public. That would be that's the kind of thing that the Board of Ethical Review, especially in cases of whistleblowing, is constantly saying, is that you should try to resolve these things internally, they say. So I don't know. It's a difficult case. It raises all sorts of questions, but it's a quite interesting case.